L'Assemblée générale.
The General Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale, j'ai
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire. I invite him to address the Assembly.
Excellence, Monsieur le Président.
Your Excellency, Mr. President of the 72nd session of the General...
l'Assemblée générale. L'Assemblée générale.
The General Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale, j'ai
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire. I invite him to address the Assembly.
Excellence, Monsieur le Président.
Your Excellency, Mr. President of the 72nd session of the General Assembly of the United Nations, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Your Excellency, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, may I first of all convey my condolences to the government and the people of Mexico. I would also like to thank you on behalf of my people for the support given by your countries to the Côte d'Ivoire, who has now been elected to the United Nations Security Council for the period 2018 to 19. Our election is witness to the support given us for our belief in peace and dialogue. Our election is also an opportunity for us to share with you all and with the world our experience on how to emerge from a crisis and how to ensure effective cooperation with the United Nations. Our experience was with the United Nations operation in the Côte d'Ivoire, which was a successful operation. That peacekeeping operation has been acknowledged by all as one of the rare successes of the United Nations in peacekeeping in the last few decades. And this should encourage the United Nations as it develops initiatives to support peace. And so, during our term as a non-permanent member of the Security Council, the Côte d'Ivoire will work to promote fair and pragmatic compromises as we seek to settle crises on the agenda of the Security Council. Mr. President, in a world suffering from serious geopolitical turbulence and climate change, our topic for this session is particularly timely. It is focusing on people, striving for peace and a decent life for all on a sustainable planet. We must come up with a more balanced development model, more balanced among the different countries and fairer among all the people. This theme is a challenge for us if we wish to preserve our planet so that we can build a virtuous world for ourselves and for future generations. We have held discussions with each and every country as we sought our candidacy in the Security Council, and from our discussions with you, we have noted that there is indeed an urgent need felt by everybody to respond to new global threats, so as to establish a lasting peace for all. And so we must now move on to action, to live up to our commitments, to live up to the expectations of our people in terms of security and development. Mr. President, since 2001, the global anti-terrorist system established by the United Nations has become stronger in terms of laws and in terms of coordinating international action. But despite some encouraging developments and despite the success of anti-terrorist operations by major powers and their allies in the Middle East and to a lesser extent in Africa, the world is finding it difficult to find an adequate collective response to terrorism. So successes that are achieved will be in vain, and the terrorist threat will continue to be very disturbing if Africa continues to be the soft underbelly of the global anti-terrorist struggle. The major powers must step up their commitment to combat terrorism in Africa and must provide greater support to what we in Africa are trying to do. We call for support for the Sahel G5. Its work is of paramount importance in ensuring security in a large part of Africa. The Côte d'Ivoire will continue to support the Sahel G5 and its effort to combat terrorism in Africa. And this will be one of our priorities during our term as a non-permanent member of the Security Council. For without stability, there cannot be any development. Climate change is a real concern today, and no country is safe from the devastating impact of climate change, which jeopardizes the life of our peoples and the economies of our countries. We must act responsibly and quickly if we wish to preserve our way of life and our planet. On the Paris Climate Agreement, my country will live up to its signing of it, and we will seek energy transitions. We will seek to develop new kinds of agriculture, and we will seek to preserve and protect the environment. It is a matter of urgency that every country, just like the Côte d'Ivoire, lives up to the commitments freely made within the context of the Paris Climate Agreement. And the developed countries must also live up to their commitments to finance adapting the economies of countries in the south to the impact of global warming. We must also pay attention to the future of small island countries. We have to look at climate change as a real threat to international peace and security. It's a matter of urgency that we take the right steps, inter alia by adopting a global environment pact, which has just been proposed by France. Mr. President, preserving peace and security in the world involves managing the issue of nuclear weapons. In this connection, we must do our utmost. We will be doing our utmost within the Security Council to find a peaceful solution to serious nuclear tension in the Korean Peninsula. Any use of nuclear weapons in that region would be an indication of the total moral collapse of our civilization and the end of the era we are living in. It would also mean there would be a danger of a nuclear conflict, and the consequences of that would be unforeseeable. And so I would call on the major powers to show restraint and to enter into dialogue with North Korea so as to create the conditions for a lasting de-escalation, and so as to reassure the world about the maintenance of stability and peace in that region. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, all effort to combat irregular migration and trafficking in human beings and smuggling of migrants have not put an end to that phenomenon, which still continues to swallow up thousands of young people coming from African countries into the Mediterranean area. In fact, there has been increasing fragilization of democracy. There has been an increase in extremist feelings, even in established Western democracies. To put an end to dangerous migration, developed countries and host countries and regions must mobilize investment and resources to finance development in the countries of origin and transit of migrants, so that their economies will be able to offer jobs and opportunities to young people. Efforts to put an end to smuggling in countries of origin must also be stepped up. Moreover, the international community must put an end to the war in Libya and dismantle terrorist groups and smugglers' networks, which are persisting in carrying out trafficking in human persons. In the Côte d'Ivoire, our response to this scourge focuses on prevention by making those that might migrate irregularly aware of the dangers, and we try to provide assistance to them, and we are also trying to dismantle smuggling networks. However, we have to remember our existing international legal obligations and respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms of all migrants. Mr. President, building a world of peace and security is our top priority. Despite a difficult economic situation today because of a sharp drop in the world price for cocoa, the Côte d'Ivoire will live up to its commitments in seeking to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. As part of our priority goals, the Côte d'Ivoire has achieved an average 9% growth rate over the last 5 years. This was due to a successful macroeconomic policy, the hard work of our people, and a better business environment, and also major investment. And now what we are seeking to do is to distribute efficiently the fruits of this growth, particularly to those most in need and the most vulnerable sectors of our population, while we seek also to transform our country. This is the crux of our National Development Plan for 2016 to 20, and of the bold social reforms entered into by my government. I would make an urgent appeal to all states and to civil society organizations to ensure that international mobilization for implementation of the SDGs is not weakened. The developed countries must live up to their commitments to contribute to financing for development in accordance with the Addis Ababa Plan of Action. Mr. President, we have to face facts. Individual responses and collective responses by our countries to the major security challenges of the world today are all inadequate, even although real achievements have been made in combating terrorism in certain areas. But nevertheless, the fact is that our world is vulnerable. No state can stand alone and cope with the global threats. The increase in terrorism, the devastating impact of global warming, the continuing nuclear tensions, particularly in the Korean Peninsula, have seriously weakened our collective security system. And so we have to agree on how to strengthen that system, how to modernize it, so that our countries can find effective common responses to the serious threats of today. The greatest importance should be given to preventing conflicts, so as to spare our peoples from the human cost and the material damage which is exorbitant, which is caused by wars. Here I would welcome the adoption and implementation of the common framework between the United Nations and the African Union for a stronger partnership for peace and security. This will enable those two institutions to work closely together at all stages in the cycle of a conflict, so that we can proceed in a foreseeable, systematic and strategic manner. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations stands at a major turning point. It faces real challenges in carrying out its mission. So this is a timely moment for my country to say that it fully supports the reforms being entered into by the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres. We would like to once again confirm our full trust in him. The reforms are a move in the right direction and should be continued in this same spirit with support from all countries. The Côte d'Ivoire is getting ready to write a new page in its history in the United Nations now that we have been elected to the Security Council, thanks to your support. We must continue to work together to make sure that the United Nations can move ahead with its priority issues for our peoples. Thank you very much.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale,
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank His Excellency Mr. Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, for the statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we take leave of the head of state.